Well, welcome to another chat with Tim. I've been wanting to share some of my favorite metaphors that have to do with recovery. And so today I want to share a couple of metaphors that are about parts of recovery that are very difficult for many people. And that is coming to accept the parts of themselves that they used to see as weaknesses, that they used to despise, because those parts of themselves got them punished, got them teased, got them rejected, and people didn't want to hang around with them. And so they were told they were too sensitive or too shy, or because the fact they weren't funny like some of the popular kids, they hated their serious bent, or they spent too much time thinking, or they were an introvert who liked to spend too much time by themselves and they got punished for that. Or because they liked to give hugs, they were told they were too needy, or they're told they cry too much or too easily, or they're too talkative. And so, for most people from complex trauma, there are parts of themselves that they see as their strengths and they seek to develop those, but there's parts of themselves that they have perceived as weaknesses and they try to get rid of them. They try to hide those qualities. They try to shut those qualities down so that nobody will ever see them. They try to become something other than what their basic personality is, because that to them is the only way to survive and to find acceptance, to get their needs met. But with that, they learn that being who I am authentic isn't good enough. It leads to rejection. And so there's parts of me I hate. There's parts of me that I see as weaknesses that I wish I didn't have. And that's very much part of what most people from complex trauma have to deal with. And so they come into recovery and they're told that that sensitivity, that introversion, that those are strengths, not weaknesses, that everybody's made different, and that many of those qualities are the very qualities that enable you to have intimate relationships, that enable you to be healthy in intimate relationships. So you can have empathy, you can hug, you can show affection, you can cry with people, you can be totally human. And so they are your greatest your greatest strengths, not your greatest weaknesses, because they enable healthy intimate relationships. But boy, for many people, that is hard to swallow, because all of their history says that those qualities are weaknesses. Those qualities result in rejection. Those qualities result in being treated as inferior. And so, how do you come to accept those qualities in yourself? So, I want to come at this from two different angles with two metaphors that I love. So, the first is a girl many years ago that lived in a village where they didn't have running water. And so, she every day had to carry a yoke on her shoulders with a water pot, a clay water pot on each end. She'd fill them up, carry them back to her village, and that would be some of their water for the day. The problem is that one of the pots had a small crack in it. And so she would go and fill up the two water pots and walk back. And by the time that she got back, one of the pots would have, some of the water would have drained away and it would be only half full. But they were poor, they didn't have any other options, and so she did that. And so just think of what that pot that was cracked might have felt. It would have experienced shame. I am flawed. I cause you to be able to only deliver half the amount of water that you need. The other pot, it does its job perfectly. Compared to it, I am so inferior. I am so less than. And it could really get down on itself, beat itself up, see itself very negatively because of that crack. But the girl says to it one day, says, have you ever noticed the path that we walk every day back and forth to the village? On one side of the path, there's flowers, beautiful, beautiful flowers. On the other side of the path, there are no flowers. Do you know which side of the path has flowers? It's the side of the path that your pot is on. And so as I walk and water drips, it waters the ground and flowers grow. And so what I want you to understand is that you have actually been a very positive pot because you've created beauty. You've enabled us to have flowers so that I can now decorate or gather them, decorate our home, use them to bless others. I am so thankful for the crack in your pot. And so the key is what the pot saw as a defect was actually the source of life and beauty. And this to me is so critical because often in complex trauma homes, what is presented as weakness or defects are the key ingredients of what makes us humans who are capable of connecting and experiencing, giving and receiving love. You need sensitivity. You need to be able to empathize. You need to be able to cry, to show all the emotions. Those are super strengths when it comes to experiencing love and genuine, healthy, intimate relationships. So part of recovery is starting to see what you saw as a flaw, as a weakness, and beginning to realize, whoa, I got to reframe that. And maybe this metaphor will help you into this is actually a strength. And my family didn't like it because it exposed their lack of emotional depth. It exposed their uncomfortable wounds that they had never dealt with. But now I want to develop it and use it to be a blessing to others. So that's the first one. The second one is also about a cracked pot. And it goes back to long ago, before electricity, before gas and kerosene lanterns, to the time when they just had lamps with oil in them with a wick. And you would light the wick and that would cast a little bit of light and that you would carry around and that would be your source of light. The problem in the story is of a young girl who there was some wind. And so as soon as she would go outside to go across to the shed to feed the chickens or take care of the animals, the lamp would blow out. And so she had to figure out, how do I keep my lamp alive and get to the thing? So she tried. She put a perfect pot over top. That would protect it from the wind. But the problem is that perfect pot, you smothered out the light. No light got out. And so she eventually found if she used a pot with a few cracks in it, those cracks would protect that little fragile light from the wind, but it would let light out so that she could see to walk outside. So this to me is very important because I think a lot of people, when they come into recovery, it's not just the things in their childhood that they saw as weaknesses and flaws. It's some of the stuff that happened to them. So it's not just their personality. It's the fact that they were, let's say, sexually abused or trafficked, or their family moved all the time, or they grew up in extreme poverty or racism or injustice. They had some very, very painful, traumatic events as part of their childhood. And now it's hard to face those events. It's hard to see that any good can come out of those events. And that's where this story helps me. Because if you look at those events, it's not that your flaws automatically create beauty. It's much more nuanced than that. Because what looks like damage to you, the sexual abuse, being trafficked, the many moves, not being loved, yes, there was damage that cracked you, but you had to survive. But if you heal those wounds, there'll still be some cracks, but that can now let light out. So your wounds can become the platform from which you now speak to help others. That now gives you a platform to be able to identify with others, to be able to offer help to others, light to others, healing to others. You can become a light bearer. And so what I have found often is that the area of my deepest cracks becomes the area where I best help others. But I first have to heal myself. And so those two metaphors of cracked pots, to me, are so helpful in just coming to accept all the parts of my personality that I used to see as weaknesses and all the damage that was done to me as a child that I now tend to think is just the bad part of me, that nothing good can come out of that. That can now become the basis of helping so many others, of being a light bearer to others.